Right, so we're stitching in this segment to episode number 32 of season 3 because we have some breaking news regarding the Detroit Pistons. So once we finish up this segment, we'll get into regular programming with episode number 32, but we wanted to make sure to include this. So basically, emergency podcast inside another episode. Breaking news, Trajan Langdon has dealt away Jaden Ivey in a 3-team deal. I never quite thought this day would come, but here we are. Per Shams Charania, just in Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit have agreed to a multi-team deal that sends Jaden Ivey and Mike Conley Jr. to the Bulls and Kevin Huerter and Dario Saric to the Pistons, sources tell ESPN. Detroit also receives a 2026 first round protected swap from the Minnesota Timberwolves. So Ryan, as people watch, we talked about in episode 32, many people that might be coming to Detroit in a trade who might be dealt out in a trade from the Pistons. And we brought up Jaden Ivey as one of the protectables, one of the untouchables, somebody that wouldn't be able to get dealt away. And Trajan Langdon has come to the podium and said, hey, I'm not making any big moves, but in my opinion, this is a pretty big move because Jaden Ivey is one of the fan favorites, and people have very mixed emotions right now. And he's a player that the Pistons have developed, used a high pick on him. What are your first thoughts as far as dealing away Jaden Ivey? He's one of our favorites.
So to me, when you think of what he was last year for us, he looked like a blooming star.
Yeah.
And then he would just keep building and building and building. Then Orlando comes to town, and we have probably one of the most recently gruesome injuries that Pistons fans
Yeah.
United have had to watch, in which we saw a budding star, boom, go down like that. And then the end result is now he's getting traded away. Well, in the short span of games that we've seen him play in, we said it earlier when he first came back, and I'm still gonna say it now. He is nowhere near the same player that he once was. And that's sad because and I'm not saying he can never get back to that, but I think just getting the new fresh restart within a new franchise, they're trying to center their future around you. You have all of these pieces in front of you. Take this opportunity and go for it. That's what I see this move as. It's not necessarily Trajan sitting there going like, you know what, Ivy, we don't want you anymore. It's more
Hmm.
so like we want to give you this opportunity to actually develop in a city, be close to home, be this star that you want to be, and have this opportunity to grow in new challenges and whatnot. But they also see it as, okay, let's bring in Kevin Huerter, let's bring in Dario Saric. What can these two guys bring to our team going forward? So I see it as new opportunities and less of Jaden Ivey, you're not the player that you used to be. We don't want you. I think it really is just new opportunities. Um, because like he really isn't the same player. And you look at the stats and then not even take the stats out of it, truthfully. You look at the player and how he moves on the floor. He still is moving timid. He's moving very like I feel like I could go down at any point in time. And he just looks lanky. Like he's just like he looks like Desmond Bain per se before the trade to the Orlando Magic, where he's like stocky and built, but it's not like the same Jaden Ivey. Like he was almost afraid to build up his leg strength because he was afraid of getting hurt again. So I don't I'm torn because I love Jaden Ivey. I wanted him to work, but that injury happens, and I was talking to my dad about this. I'm like, you know what? Not necessarily in the same realm of potential per se, but in the same realm of like it's very similar per se. Is Grant Hill when he had his injury, where he was coming into himself and you were finally starting to see like, okay, this guy's legit. And then he goes down with the injury. and then it's like he was never the same player or even scratching
Hmm.
that surface. And Jaden Ivey, obviously they're two totally different players because I would say Grant Hill was LeBron James before LeBron James.
Hmm.
And you get traded away for Ben Wallace, who is a first ballot Hall of Famer. So obviously these trades are different. But in the same context, you have Jaden Ivey, who's a budding star, goes down with injury, and then it really isn't the same player that he once was. And then you're stuck in a position. So I think it was mainly more so let's give Jaden Ivey an opportunity to go do his thing elsewhere and less of like a we don't want you anymore.
I think it's an interesting move on the Chicago Bulls' part, mainly because they have an Dasuno that is a rim rusher, much like Jaden Ivey previously to his injury. Josh Giddey is another point guard that they have there. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Jaden Ivey gets in the mix of that Chicago Bulls team. But then I also think that it is a good strategic move getting rid of him now before his stock does drop because it is undeniable that his stats, his averages, have nearly cut in half this season as far as playing time, points, assists, rebounds. It go almost across the board, other than his shooting percentage, has been cut in half. For example, his rookie year, he averaged 16 points. The following season, 15. Last season, in the 30 games he played, 18 points a game. Now he's at 8. His minutes, mainly his first 3 seasons were right around 30 minutes per game. Right now he's at 16. And if he keeps going at this rate, keeps playing like this, the most value he's going to have is him in his current state, midway through the season. Still young, still possible for him to make a big turnaround. And that's the one thing why not upset about the trade because I think getting a Kevin Herter was really necessary for this Pistons team to have what it needs to have at as far as at the 3-point line. But when it comes to Jaden Ivey, he's young enough where, yes, it might be a slow process right now, but it might turn around at any given point. If you remember, with Chris Middleton back in the mid 2010s, we traded away him pretty early on in his career, and then he flourished in Milwaukee along Giannis Antetokounmpo. I just don't want it to be one of those situations where we're a little brash to trade somebody away and then they turn into a future all-star. And I believe in Jaden Ivey. I believe in his work ethic and I believe in his play style that could really flourish at the NBA level. And he's proven that he can be a three-level scorer. His three-point shot, even though his points have come down this season, that category of his game has gotten better in his fourth season. So I'll be interested to see where his career goes. We'll obviously be watching very, very closely because I know the Pistons fan base loves Jaden Ivey and wouldn't necessarily be the guy we thought we'd be moving on from. But here we are. As far as talking about the guys that we're bringing in and Kevin Herter and Dario Saric, I think it gives the Pistons something excited to be because they're going to add a dynamic that we can solidify and really try to thrive at, and which is the 3-point line. Ryan, if you want to kind of talk about what Dario Saric and Kevin are going to bring to this Pistons team on top of what Duncan Robinson and Karis LeVert, who's been out, what they brought.
Yeah, so you look at Kevin Herter, aka Red Velvet. Great nickname, by the way. It really is a good nickname.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
but all of his career has been known as a sharpshooter. He can facilitate, he can defend, he can rebound. He can pretty much do everything that you would want him to do. If you ask of him to do it, he's going to do it. He's one of those kind of guys. One of my favorite parts of his career was in Sacramento because he just lit it up there. Um, in Chicago, obviously, you stick the red jersey on a redhead, it just pops. But no, he is a career 36, 38 to almost 40% from three. And then you look at Dario Saric, who outside of obviously being a stretch four, his career 3-point percentage is 36% from three, which is fantastic. Um, he's usually around the 10 to 15 point per game mark. He can do a little bit of everything. He's averaged around 5 to 6 rebounds a game for his career. He's above 85% at the free throw line, which is great. That's a great statistic. And then even from the field outside of the 3-point line, he's usually around 45% from the field. So you're going to be adding in a guy that can stretch the floor from a stretch four big man position, in which we desperately need, I might add, because Isaiah Stewart, yes, he has developed his three and that has come a long ways. He's not really going to put the ball on the floor every single time. He's going to either post up or he's going to catch and shoot. He's not going to put the ball on the floor. And then Tobias, I see this move more as like a Tobias Harris long term because they can pretty much do very similar things. And so I see this move as like a yes, Tobias Harris is coming towards the Udonis Haslem years of his career. He's still playing at a very high level, but Dario Saric, the way he can stretch the floor and create spacing, like he is what? He's 6'10", 225, and he's above 36% from three. Like that's a very good addition. Um, and I think just having him in units with, you could put him on the floor at the same time as Stu. You could put him on the floor at the same time as Duran. It doesn't matter out there. Who is out there rather. And I just think you add this stretch four that can really space the floor and do a little bit of everything. And then you add in Kevin Herter, who can do a little bit of everything on top of what we added. So I think those two guys just created even more depth than what we already had. And then as far as Jaden Ivey goes, yes, that does hurt, but his contract is pretty big right now. And the concern was, do we pay him long term? And what does that look like? Because coming off that injury, we had no idea what he was going to look like. And so
Right.
I think not pursuing that contract extension really gives us more flexibility there. And therefore, then we can offer that money up to guys like Asar Thompson when his contract comes to an end. Or you
Mm-hmm.
want to convert Dennis Jenkins' contract from a two-way deal to a full-time deal. Because right now, on his two-way deal, he only has 5 games left on that contract for NBA games. So like I see this as like a let's give opportunity to our roster that we've established because Dennis Jenkins is putting on a clinic right now. He is doing phenomenally. And nobody thought that was going to happen. But then it also opens up cap flexibility across your entire roster while adding in two guys in a pick swap. So I think these two guys are going to be good additions. Not going to be like, holy crap, we just beat the Bulls in on this trade. It's more of like okay, the Pistons just added two decently dangerous options to an already deep roster.
I thought you made a good point bringing up Dennis Jenkins. I think if he hasn't played at is such a high level as he has, Jaden Ivey would easily have 10 more minutes a game and have a little bit more of a role within the offense, passing the ball. We saw it last season, him make big strides and being able to work with Cade around the perimeter. But with Dennis Jenkins making such big strides, it forces a guy like Jaden Ivey out. And I don't know if anyone else took note of it. Maybe I'm looking a little much into it. But the last couple months since the season has taken off, Jaden Ivey just hasn't seemed himself. He was very much boisterous and outgoing in his press conferences. He hasn't been like that all this season. No smiling in team pictures when getting on the bus, planes, things like that. Not even in the social media clips. So I have a feeling something's going on in the locker room, not necessarily people feuding, but him just not buying in. And maybe him going to Chicago being one of the spunkier guys on that team, having a couple of young guys around him might give him a nice little resurgence with the Chicago Bulls. Now, on the other side of things, with Kevin Huerter coming into the Detroit Pistons, I think he should be very, very excited to be playing alongside Cade Cunningham, Dennis Jenkins, guys that are going to be able to set him up around the three-point line. And literally just watching Duncan Robinson film, he should be very, very excited. And he is gone to the wayside a little bit, Kevin Huerter, in the last couple of years. Not made as big of waves as he did when he was in Atlanta with the Sacramento Kings, etc. I think we're going to see a resurgence of Kevin Huerter, a new version of him, much like we've seen with Duncan Robinson moving on from the Miami Heat. And I know Kevin Huerter's played on his fair share of NBA rosters, but for me, I kind of like that, bringing in a guy that has been in multiple locker rooms and maybe not the most healthy locker rooms, and then now coming into the Pistons and hopefully buying into the environment they have, because as a fan base, we know what they have going right now is a special thing, and that might mix really, really well with a guy like Kevin Huerter that's hungry for winning, hungry for a good coaching staff, hungry for guys that are bought in to playing their role. And Kevin Huerter obviously likes playing his role of three-point shooting because that's what he focuses on so much. So I think it'll be interesting to see in the coming weeks what happens. And obviously we have some fun games this week coming up with Denver Nuggets, New York Knicks. We probably won't see Kevin Huerter and maybe both of those games, but a lot of fun games coming up as Pistons fans. I was looking around the national media and seeing who was reacting to this trade. As far as what the fan base is saying, everyone seems to be kind of sad missing Jaden Ivey, just because he was a face of the team for a little bit, just one of the exciting players that the fan base could actually just be happy about. But as far as national media, most people are thinking this is a pretty good trade for the Detroit Pistons. Kevin Preston of ESPN put out an article grading the trade for Minnesota, Chicago, and Detroit. And he gave Detroit a B and Chicago a B plus. And he had a few things to say about the trade. I'm just going to read these quotes so we can get a little deeper inside look. For the second consecutive year, Detroit was in a unique spot at the deadline as a contending team with the ability to add salary via nearly 19 million in room below the luxury tax line. Instead of looking to turn veteran Tobias Harris into a difference-making player at power forward, the Pistons aimed more modestly to add to their rotation. Herter could end up playing the role off the bench on the wing that Detroit hoped Karis LeVert would fill. LeVert hasn't played in 2 weeks due to illness, even though he has been upgraded to available for tonight of the recording versus the Denver Nuggets. So, I don't necessarily see Herter taking minutes away from Karis. I see Tobias Harris getting off the floor a little bit faster. I think that Tobias is going to keep his starting role, but I would like to see Herter at the power forward position just because he isn't necessarily a bang bodies player, but with Stewart coming off the bench at the five, I think Stewart will be able to fill that role for two men basically and keep Kevin Herter at the 3-point line at the four position. Ryan, where's your thoughts at as far as the rotation? Do you see him taking minutes from Karis LeVert? Who do you see it affecting most? Where's your head at?
I don't necessarily think he's going to steal minutes per se, but I think based off of what we know from JB is that it depends on who the matchup is and it depends on who has the hot hand. Because one night you could, if you look at it from the big man group as an example, one night you could have B-Ball Paul out there. The other night you have Isaiah Stewart out there. The next night you have you have a clear rotation of guys that you can mix in at different sorts and different times throughout the game. So I think it's really like alongside of what JB did with Jaden Ivey is that yes, his minutes did decrease, but its minutes decreased because of his effectiveness on the court. He wasn't as efficient. He wasn't scoring like he used to. It wasn't the same player. And Dennis Jenkins came in and kind of filled that void, therefore increasing his minutes. So I think if Kevin Herter can do something along the lines of Jenkins in the sense that he has this time frame of minutes that he's already out there for, and maybe he's playing great, you're going to get more minutes throughout the rest of the game. If you get into
Mhm.
foul trouble, okay, here comes in Ron Holland. Like that kind of thing where you're kind of each game depends on the matchups out there at all times. And it's really one of those kind of rotations. I don't see him stealing minutes. I don't see him um, necessarily doing a whole lot there, but I do think he is one of those players that like you're not it's not like you're giving up Jaden Ivey for crumbs. This isn't a crumb. This is like a high-end rotation player that is going to get minutes here and there. Right now, this season he's averaging around what is it? Let me see real quick. He is averaging around 23 minutes a game. Granted, that's in Chicago, and Chicago's not great, but that's still 23 minutes. And that's the low end of his career is 23 to 20 minutes a game. And but
Yeah.
realistically, is he going to get 20 minutes? Who knows? If Dennis Jenkins is getting around 16 per se, who's to say that Kevin Herter couldn't get that either? So I really think it's based off of matchups more so than anything. And like you've seen like guys like Marcus Sasser who plays in spurts. Like one game he's playing 15 minutes. The other game you barely see him out there and he's out there for two. So I think it really just depends on the matchup and how you're playing within the system.
I would love to see Duncan Robinson and Kevin Herter on the court at the same time, just like every other possession they're getting their three off. I think that would be so cool. Now let's talk about Dario Saric a little bit. I know he's kind of I don't want to say a throwaway player in the trade, but I don't see him getting too many minutes. Just because I love B-ball Paul. I don't want him taking minutes from B-ball Paul. I know, Saric is a power forward, small forward, but those minutes got to go somewhere and be taken from somebody. And I think that's just like the natural progression. What are your thoughts on Dario Saric, who obviously has had some pretty good years in the NBA?
I think he will actually take time away from B-ball Paul. But it'll again
Okay.
go based off of what I made note of with Kevin Herter is I really think it just depends on the matchups out there. Although I will say comparatively between the two, I love B-ball Paul, don't get me wrong, but I think I'd rather have Dario Saric out there than Paul Reed just because of his ability to stretch the floor. Whereas
Hmm.
Paul Reed can really just post up and that's about it. Yeah, you'll see him catch and shoot a three sometimes, but that is very rare, very rare. But Dario Saric, he can put the ball on the floor. He can go coast to coast if he really had to. He can shoot. He can defend. He can do just about everything B-ball Paul can do, but he's also more offensively gifted. So I think just in the mindset of if you just like the other day where I was comparing the Knicks and the Celtics or the Thunder and the Lakers per se, and you take away those players, I think Dario Saric in a matchup, if they were to go one on one against each other, not saying they would unless they're in practice, but I'm taking Saric over Paul Reed just because of his a whole game as a whole versus Paul Reed, where yeah, he can defend probably better than Dario Saric can. But Dario Saric is not a bad defender and also has the offensive capabilities. So I think he does take minutes there. Um, but I think as far as Stu goes, Stu is fine in rotation. Duran obviously is fine in rotation. Tobias, fine in rotation. I really think if he's going to take minutes, it's going to be from Paul Reed.
Okay, so that will wrap up our trade talk regarding Jaden Ivey. It's still a bit of a shocker. We might talk about it in next week's episode as further details to come. Mainly hearing from the fan base what Trajan Langdon might say in a press conference, JB Bickerstaff might say, these types of things. So we'll keep you in the know regarding those types of comments. But before we get you into episode number 32, I want to just quickly shout out Asar Thompson, who was named Defensive Player of the Month for the Eastern Conference in January. And Great award for him to rack up in his young NBA career. And what we saw him average as far as steals in January was 2.4 steals a game, playing at an absolute high level. So congrats to Asar Thompson. That's a great award. It seems like nationally from the NBA, the Pistons are getting a lot of accolades right now. And so very cool times to be a Pistons fan. All right, so now make sure to like and subscribe. Comment below your thoughts on the Jaden Ivey trade. And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 32 of season 3, y'all know the deal. I got to talk to you about a few quick things. First off, if you haven't yet, make sure to like and subscribe. Also, follow us on Instagram. The link is in the description below. When you follow us on Instagram, you can expect things like weekly clips, debate topics, hot takes, those types of things. So make sure, if you want to stay in the know with everything going on with the Detroit Pistons, to follow us on Instagram. Also, I've been trying to share to our story fellow Detroit Pistons content creators, just to spread word on all the great content you can take in surrounding the Detroit Pistons. So stay out on the lookout for that. Also, if you don't know, now you know, Grind Clothing Co. is our merch sponsor. You can find them in the description below or in our link in bio. Grind Clothing Co. has put together a lot of merch designs for us, and they also have their other design options that are just for the people, spreading the great designs. So if you want to wear your favorite Detroit Pistons podcast, Revved Up 906 merch, make sure to hit that link. Also, if you haven't yet, make sure to watch last week's episode. Last week, we talked about if the Pistons are in need of a second option to play alongside Cade Cunningham. And we talked about all the little bits and pieces and the details revolving of what that would take to add a second option to the Detroit Pistons. So make sure to go watch that episode. Let's get into episode number 32 of season 3. And we have a good one for you guys today because as the trade deadline quickly approaches, more and more trade talk is happening. And a lot of different tweets are being put out there of who the Pistons might be sodding after. So we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Cade and the MVP race, where he lies as far as the top NBA players of today. And if he could actually win the MVP race, we'll talk about that. And how the Knicks fans apparently fear the Pistons. Stephen A. Smith had a big quote this week talking about how him as a Knicks fan, he's scared of the Pistons. And as a Pistons fan, that sounds great to me. We'll make sure to also talk about our player of the week shout outs. Me and Ryan will each pick a player to shout out because of their great play in the last week. Before we get into the trade talk of this week, I want to make sure to shout out Jalen Duren, as he will be making his first All-Star appearance in this year's All-Star game. And that is great news. It's obviously been something, Ryan, that we've been speculating for the last couple weeks. At the beginning of the season, it was one of my hot takes that Jalen Duren will be an all-star this season, and we're finally seeing that appearance. It's the first time the Pistons have had more than one all-star in the game since, I believe, the 2006-2007 season. So a lot to look forward to as far as the all-star break quickly approaching in the NBA season. All right, let's get into trade talk. The fact that more and more names are getting thrown in the mix kind of worries me. Something may happen. Like I said last week, Trajan Langdon has come to the podium in press conferences and says, hey, I'm not going to be quick to make a decision, so don't worry about it. But Ryan, as the Pistons keep playing so good and the brand of basketball they're playing at such a high level, you would have to imagine that guys like Javonte Green, Ron Holland, Beef Stew, and their play style is a high commodity in today's NBA, maybe even like a Dennis Jenkins. As far as the players we have and being a hot commodity in today's NBA, I feel like that's one of the main reasons the Pistons are getting thrown around so much in trade talk these days.
Yeah, I think the high level of play that we've had And honestly, our entire bench outside of our starters has been phenomenal this year. And so obviously the last couple of years, last 2 years in particular, you had Isaiah Stewart in trade talks
Yeah.
24/7. And then you've had Jaden Ivey flown in the mix in the offseason last
Hmm.
year for a potential deal for Devin Booker. And
Yep.
obviously nothing's happened. And I think from where we're at right now, in my opinion, yes, all these names are coming up in the trade discussions and whatnot. But when you look at the roster, when you're beating Brooklyn, I know Brooklyn sucks because
Yeah.
they're terrible. They're absolutely terrible. They have nobody. There's a reason why they moved on from Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr., and that's because they
Right.
got a deal that they couldn't turn down. And
Hmm.
Michael Porter Jr. is very good, but I don't think he's really that good. But the point that I'm trying to make is Brooklyn sucks. Um, the fact that we scored 100 points in 3 quarters is saying something. And I
Yeah.
honestly, yes, the as bad as Brooklyn is, the fact that you're scoring over 100 points within 3 quarters against any NBA team is crazy already. But then the fact
Hmm.
that you beat them by 50 plus to end the game is even crazier. Like that final score, that is like, holy crap, the Pistons put up 30 points in the fourth quarter when they already had 100. Like that's
Yeah.
dominance. So when you look up and down this roster, and I know we're being thrown in the ring with trades as like, oh, the Pistons need to make a move for a second player or yada yada yada. I don't think we do. The fact that we now have two all-stars on our current team right now, that's saying something. So clearly we
Yep.
have Batman and Robin right there. We don't need to make a move for another player. And then outside of that, my concern is you look up and down this roster, everybody's playing at such a high level. Why? Because they all fit together. There's a reason for
Hmm.
that. There's no iron team. And yes, that's a saying because it's true. There is no iron team. If you look up and down this roster, most recently against Golden State, the Warriors couldn't compete with us, even though they have arguably the greatest shooter of all time on their team. Why? Because we are so deep. Like we have starting five, perfectly good and healthy and great all the time. But then you have 6 to 8 total players on your team. And honestly, the whole bench, for that matter, can come in and play quality minutes night in and night out. B-Ball Paul,
Right.
even though he doesn't play a whole lot as of late, he can come in and give you solid minutes in crunch time situations when you need a guy to step up. So when I look up and down this roster, and yes, they're all playing great right now, but they're all playing as a group. And I'm afraid that if we take like Isaiah Stewart out of the mix, I don't think Isaiah Stewart is actually touchable at all, to be honest. But if let's say you take him out of the mix, and then what happens to 6, 7, and 8? Like, do they just stop gelling? Like, what happens? So I'm afraid that if we move one of these guys, that it could be detrimental to the how the team works as a whole. Obviously, it's not Cade Cunningham or Jalen Duren that we're moving on from, but you're still moving a quality piece to get what? We don't know what that piece would be that would come in. And Michael Porter Jr., to me, based off of the personality that we're seeing in Brooklyn, I would be very scared to bring in Michael Porter Jr. right now. I'm not saying the talent isn't there. The talent is definitely there. But I am concerned with the personality. The personality is getting used to the New York life. They're getting used to being the star on that team. They're getting used to all this media attention that they did not have in Denver, Colorado, of all places. They're now starting to be in the spotlight. So I'm concerned that you bring that personality that is getting very high and just mighty of themselves into this team in which you have to damper that side of Michael Porter Jr. all of a sudden that we didn't see since Missouri and high school. So I would be concerned with just bringing anybody. It doesn't have to be specifically him, but I'd be concerned to break up this team because if you're beating teams the way we have this season, we still only have 12 losses on the year. So I think we need to halt this national media, everybody needs to be up in trade talk conversation around the Pistons because they're 30 what and 12. Like they're good. They don't need to make any moves. If they do, it's for a piece that helps them. You're not getting rid of players, you're bringing players in. That's the mindset that I would have. I think if anything we're buying, we're not selling.
Per Mark Stein of ESPN, he is reporting that the Pistons are internally considering making a trade for, like you said, Michael Porter Jr. or Miles Bridges. And me personally, I do not like that these names are being thrown around because you said it right with MPJ. These guys are ego guys, and that is not what the Pistons have going for them right now. They have that chemistry, the pass first mindset that's working so well for them. And think about a play style of Miles Bridges, a rim rushing big man, small forward. And think about how that could clog the lane up for Jalen Duren and mess with the chemistry that Cade Cunningham has with JD, that Dennis Jenkins has with JD. It's only going to mess up the paint and the strategy they have going right in the paint right now. I do like MPJ strictly because he can hit the three ball, but like you said, the ego might not be worth what he can offer on the court. And what JB has going on in the locker room right now, as far as chemistry, play style, the guys seem to like each other. That if you bring in a big ego guy like this, it could be a cavity or something negative that could be brought to this Pistons locker room. And what the Pistons have going for them, we haven't seen in the organization since the going to work Pistons. So this is something special they have going on here. And of course, it just happens naturally with the national media talking about possible trades and targets that certain organizations might be making because the trade deadline is coming up so soon and they have to talk about something. But it worries me a little bit because we're seeing a broad range of names. And when that happens, and there's so many names being brought up, it usually, and from just us following the Pistons closely while commentating on them, we've seen trades happen when many names are brought up. So I'm starting to get a little uneasy just because we haven't heard from Trajan Langdon in a little bit, and things are going so well right now for the Detroit Pistons that any strategic move he thinks he's making to further the Pistons might be a detriment because when things are going really, really well, you tend to fuss with a few little things and it might throw off the whole pattern that the Pistons have been going on this positive trajectory. Now, when talking about the stats for MPJ and Miles Bridges, right now MPJ is averaging 25 points a game, 7 rebounds, and 3.2 assists per game in 38 appearances. That's another thing to mention when talking about Michael Porter Jr. and wanting to target him is he deals with injuries quite a bit. He is not consistently on the court. Um, and that's something the Pistons haven't had to really deal with is injury-prone players in this last season. Miles Bridges, on the other hand, averaging 8.4 points, 6.2 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Now, I do like the rebounding side that Miles Bridges has to offer because that is something that JD could use some help with because Tobias Harris isn't the most thought first on rebounding. That's initially not what he's trying to do. He's trying to get down the court and start the offense. So that's just a few things to keep in mind. Ryan, any last thoughts when talking about trades and what the Pistons could do strategically?
When you look at the guys that we have, Tobias Harris right now, I think is actually the most tradable out of all of them
Okay.
because outside of this season, I don't really know how much longer he really has with the team. Because let's say, I'm not saying we're going to repeat history based off of last year, but let's say we match up against the Knicks in the playoffs, and then all of a sudden, it was like a controversial call here and there that we end up losing the series for. And that happens. Something would need to change. It doesn't matter what, but something would need to change. And I see that being two options, either Tobias Harris or Jaden Ivey,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think Stu gets moved. I think Stu is too much a part of the identity of the Pistons right now that you can't move on from him, because I feel like almost as if you move on from him, even if he barely sees the floor, you're taking away a key member of this identity that I feel like it would just crumble after. Um, so Tobias, what, 35, 36 years old?
Yep.
He's getting up there in age. Yes, his um post fade is phenomenal right now. It's probably the best it's ever been. But like stamina catches up with people when you get older. You're not as sprightly. You're and obviously I'm not talking poorly on him because he's playing great basketball right now. But I just think long term, outside of this season, I don't know how many years he really has left in the tank with the Pistons.
Right.
And maybe alongside more so with what Trajan Langdon sees his role being with the team. If Tobias wants to go out on a horse in the sunset and just chill for the rest of his career with the Pistons and just not see as much time on the floor, then on all means, I'm totally game for that. But if you're trying to look at him to be an integral part of the offense and defense going forward at his age right now, I just don't know if I see that beyond this season. And so, if you were to make a trade, let's say Michael Porter Jr. or Miles Bridges as an example, I feel as if you'd have to throw Tobias in that deal for either of those two teams to really consider it, or
Yeah.
for just to kind of even it out per se. And because he's the only one on our team where I'm like, you know what? It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to trade him because realistically, what are we going to have for the next couple of years? Because you look at the guys that we have, like I'm not trading Ron Holland for Michael Porter Jr. or Miles Bridges. I feel like that's actually falling off a step. I don't think that's as equal as what people may think of it. Like, yes, Michael Porter Jr. is averaging 26 points a game. He's averaging 26 points a game on a terrible Brooklyn Nets team. That's not great. If you look at his stats in Denver, he's more so along the lines of what Miles Bridges is at right now. So I just think that you take this player that is used to this sucky team and you throw him into the situation, his stats are going to go down, yes. So it's not going to look as glamorous, but how is he going to fit within the team? So I think out of anyone on our roster, I think Tobias is probably the most tradable right now, just because he's a valuable asset that any team would want to have right now. But I do think that based off our current roster, I don't think there is a movable player. The probably outside of Tobias, I would say is Jaden Ivey, but I don't think either of those two trades happen at this deadline.
All right, so we talked about the possible trade options that could maybe happen as the deadline quickly approaches. Now let's talk about the MVP race and how Cade is definitely in the mix of a possible winner. And at the beginning of the season, we might have thought that it was slightly unrealistic, but with how good the Pistons are playing and the high level he's playing at, it's definitely realistic and coming up very, very soon, and many people are starting to talk about it. Lou Williams of Run It Back said Cade is top two in the MVP convo. I would say he's top two and he's not second, meaning that I think I like his odds. But when talking about the actual odds, if you're a gambler, right now, Shea is in first at minus 450. Luka Doncic is in second at plus 900. And then Cunningham is in third with plus 1,000. So he's definitely in the conversation as the race progresses. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But when talking about the argument for Cade being in first, top of the East, Lakers aren't even at the top right now. They're playing all right. And then, of course, the Oklahoma City Thunder are just absolutely rolling in the West right now in a very tough conference. Ryan, what are some of your thoughts when talking about the percentage of Cade actually being able to win MVP?
I think Cade is actually the front runner right now, even though he may not get the media or national media attention that he deserves right now. But the reason why I say he's in first is because you look at what their, I guess, perspective role is for their teams. And let's say you take that player away, what happens to those teams? The Thunder, I think the Thunder are just fine. I honestly, and that's no disrespect to Shea. Shea is a great player, but I believe if you take him away, they're still one of the better teams in the West because their team is just deep from the starting point guard of Shea to all the way down. It's very similar structure to how the Pistons are set up right now. I think that team is actually far better, even without Shea, than majority of the teams in the league. Um, but then you look at Luka with the Lakers. You take Luka away, that team probably a play-in team, but that's pushing it. So yes, Luka definitely means more. But like you mentioned, the Lakers aren't in a prime position in the standings out west right now. So it's like, yes, he's playing out of his mind, but his play, even if it is as great as what it is right now, they need other players to step up because he can't carry the whole team on his shoulders. But then you look at the Pistons. Pistons, yes, they may be one of the deepest teams in the NBA, but you take away Cade, yes, we can still win from time to time. And yes, we are still very deep. But I think if you take Cade out, you're going from a championship team with Cade to a good Eastern Conference team. You know what I mean? Like I think there's a greater drop off with Cade not in that mix than with Cade in the mix because like you go Knicks versus Pistons, and I know I keep using that reference, but and you know what? Screw the Knicks. Let's go Boston. You look at Boston versus Detroit, and let's say Cade is out of the mix, and you have the current squad that Boston has. Obviously, Jason Tatum probably comes back. Pistons lose. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Even though I am a diehard Pistons fan and I love our current roster, you take Cade out of the mix, we lose because Jaylen Brown has finally stepped up. Even though he has been playing great all these years, he's finally hit the point of like, okay, he should actually kind of be in MVP talks, but he really isn't. He's hit that level. And then you add in Jason Tatum, and obviously Derek White is a stud too. But you look at that matchup, I'm going Boston every single time. Now you match up like Shea and the Thunder versus Luka and the Lakers, and you take Luka and Shea out of it. The Thunder just womp on the Lakers. It's not even a close series at all. So when you match each of these teams up prospectively and just think of, okay, if you take away that player, what happens? I think, yes, the Pistons probably still beat the Lakers in a series, even without those two players out of the mix. But with the Thunder, I think it's 50-50, but I think the Thunder would actually have the upper edge. So to me, yes, I think Cade actually means more to the Pistons than what Shea means to the Thunder and even what Luka means to the Lakers. But I mean, that's it. But like, who knows, really? But I think Cade is really number one. I think it's probably honestly it's Luka at two and then Shea at three. And the only reason why I'm saying Shea at three is because you look at those team all these teams side by side, the Thunder are just loaded. And so I think as deep as the Thunder are and as deep as the Pistons are, that you could go head and head there. But I really when you think about it, I think Cade just means more to the Pistons than what these two other players mean to their teams.
So Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is the current reigning MVP of the NBA, and the last player to go back to back was Nikola Jokic in the 21-22 season, or rather the 21-22 season. So I don't see Shea Gilgeous-Alexander going back to back. That's why I also kind of like him at the three spot with Cade and Luka at the top two. Just because if we remember back to early pandemic, Nikola Jokic was on an absolute tear, triple double almost every other night. So I don't see Shea Gilgeous-Alexander making that same impact and be able to win over voters again. So I think it'll be interesting as the season progresses if Cade can keep scoring nearly 30 on every given night, getting his 10 assists. I think the MVP race is slowly going to land in his lap. And with the Lakers in mind, winning is a big part of the MVP race. If your team is winning, that means that gives you an upper edge in winning the MVP. I think the Lakers will fall apart after the All-Star break. I do not believe in that team. I like JJ Redick as a coach, but with them being on the older side of NBA rosters, I just don't think they're going to be able to cut it after the All-Star break. So if the Lakers do end up dropping a little bit, like I predict, that's going to give Cade Cunningham a big opportunity to come in and sweep that MVP. Um, and also the storyline of the Detroit Pistons making this, big turnaround last season, being in the middle of the pack of the NBA, having a good first round, and then exploding this season. It just makes sense for Cade Cunningham to win an MVP for the Detroit Pistons. The storyline is there. It's just a matter of if the voters make it happen. Let's talk now about the Knicks fans and how apparently the team and the fan base fear the Pistons. This week, Stephen A. Smith got on his platform and said, quote, "The Detroit Pistons scare the living HE double hockey sticks out of me. They don't just want to win, they want the Knicks." On if he's buying the Knicks 6 game winning streak, talking about how the Knicks have turned it around as of recent. But even though the Knicks have been playing well in the last couple of games, he's still got the Pistons on the back of his mind. And Ryan, we do talk about the Pistons Knicks a lot in the podcast. It is a big game for the two of us. It proves a lot in the Eastern Conference of what the Pistons will be able to accomplish, and it also shows how the Eastern standings are going to kind of end up. If the Pistons take care of the 4 game series against the Knicks during the season, that shows us that if the second round happens where they match up, the third round, however it may end up, that we like our odds and we can go based off of what happened in those 4 games in the 82 game schedule. We can base on how that series will go. And it's funny because I don't know if Knicks fans necessarily want Stephen A. Smith talking for them, because I don't think it's really in the Knicks fans' blood to say that they're scared or all those things. So, Ryan, what are your thoughts on Stephen A. Smith having this quote? Because I know we're not the biggest Stephen A. Smith fans.
I think he is actually accurate on this one, um, because he is a Knicks fan. So even if he may have terrible takes, he is at the end of the day a New York Knicks fan. Even though sometimes it just doesn't seem like it, he really is. Um, I think he is accurate though, because you look at what the Pistons can do, and you look at the different games we've played. I mean, the fact that we put 130 points up on Brooklyn. I mean, it's Brooklyn, but still, you put up 130 points and win as dominant as you did. You're doing something right. And obviously, yes, it is still Brooklyn, but like the Knicks, 2 different times we win. And obviously, for whatever reason it is, who knows? But Karl Anthony Towns can't do jack against us. And you look at even Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson, the last time out, struggled too. And he's very injury prone. So if he goes down, honestly, yes. If Brunson goes down, the Knicks really have no shot at beating the Pistons, which is crazy to say because you look at their starting five. You have OG Anunoby, who's a stud. You have Karl Anthony Towns, who's a stud. You
Yeah.
have Jalen Brunson, who's good. You have Josh Hart, who's decent. Like they actually have a decent roster. But the Pistons have a better roster and they have a better team. And they have a team that actually believes in their head coach versus firing their coach
Yeah.
essentially with Tom Thibodeau and moving on to Brown. And Brown is a good coach. But you go from one philosophy to a new philosophy and you're just going back and forth all the way along. And you have no identity anymore because you have a coach that you have the New York Knicks mindset of win first, and you play in Madison Square Garden, which is by far one of the best venues in all of sports and one of the most iconic venues in all of sports. And you try to live up to that name that you can't live up to Why? Because they've never won. And so then you're in the mindset of like, we're always up top because the media just loves us because we play in New York, we play in a large market. But then you're in a situation where you have a team who is very scrappy, has an identity, believes in their coach, and they all work together as a cohesive group. And you bring that into the mix, and all of them are dogs, by the way. They are very scrappy and gritty. You bring that into a mix of a soft New York Knicks team that can't seem to have our number except for when you get a controversial call here and there in the playoffs last year. So no, yeah, I'd be scared too. I think he's actually accurate on this one because honestly, the Pistons are different this year. They're sitting at 36-12. And I'm not going to pull up the Knicks record right now because I really don't care about the Knicks. But I think if you look at the identity of our team, which we have, and they don't actually have one, they have internal conflict. And then you go off of everything I just said. Yeah, I'd be scared of the Knicks too. I mean, the Pistons, rather. Ooh, that was close. I'd be scared of the Pistons.
Make sure to comment below your thoughts on Stephen A. Smith's quote there. Talk about, feel free to talk about the MVP race and also the trade targets that are coming soon. We'd love to know what you guys have to say. Before we wrap up today's episode, we have to do our player of the week shout outs. I'll start us off by talking about Dennis Jenkins, who went off against the Brooklyn Nets with 18 points off the bench and 4 rebounds, and in just 20 minutes, 6 of 9 from the field. I love Dennis Jenkins' game. He rim rushes, he dishes it, he makes the right passes. Obviously, a great rebounder. He seems to focus on that side of the game just to help out some of the veteran guys in the paint, pushes the ball up the court, fast pace. That's the kind of basketball I love. When the Detroit Pistons were horrible just 3-4 years ago, that's what I was preaching on the podcast was pick up the pace, push the pace, and the Pistons do a great job of doing that, and the big help to that effort is from Dennis Jenkins. Ryan, who is your player of the week shout out?
I'm going to shout out Jalen Duren for not only the All-Star bid, but the fact that he got announced prior to tip-off, which A gets in your head. Come on, Mason, what are you doing right now? But
Yeah.
then he, even with that, like just in his head the whole game, he has the quiet, generic that we should expect on a given night double double, the 21 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, but then he had the 2 steals on top of that. He had a great
Yeah.
game and a great game coming off of the fact that Mason distracted him with the All-Star bid. I am excited for the potential that Jalen Duren has. 22 years old, first All-Star appearance, and putting up great stats all year long. He is the player that I would like to shout out.
Yeah, if you're a gambler, you can always book the Jalen Duren double double. It'll always hit. You can make a lot of money off the man, Jalen Duren. That will do it for today's episode number 32 of season 3. If you haven't yet, make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.